100%. They still coming in, you know, your people. We coming. They
CP
coming.
time, CP time. Get in this room. What y'all doing?
They coming. Something.
It's a Zoom room.
She is wrapped. She is wrapped in getting to her destination.
Yes, I am. I am getting to my destination, making
Please
sure
stay warm.
I stay warm.
Yes, no sore throats, none of that.
Right.
Yes. All right. I'm going to kick us off. Welcome everybody this afternoon. We want to welcome you to this month's professional learning series. This month's professional learning series, just like last year's professional learning series, is being brought to you by the Black Affinity Group, the CSCA's Black Affinity Group, and our steering committee members, Portia and Tanya. I see them. They are here to support alongside myself, Shayna Glass, and I am going to briefly introduce you and allow her to further introduce you to Dr. Brandeis Marshall, who is the founder and CEO of Data edX Group, LLC. Data edX provides learning and development training to help educators, scholars, and practitioners humanize their data practices. Ironically, all of that she's going to share today has context to what we are dealing with on a regular basis that we might not. She's laughing, but the reality is, unfortunately, we see this everywhere. And she has written a book about this called Data Conscious: Algorithmic Siege on Our Humanity. Her research work in data education and data science has been supported by the National Science Foundation and philanthropy organizations. Dr. Marshall holds a PhD and Masters of Science in Computer Science from Rensselaer Polytech Institute, I hope I said that correctly, and a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science from the University of Rochester. So she completely gets why you so wrapped like that. she was up in those neck of the woods.
Woo! I remember.
Flashback seeing you rap like that. Now she in Georgia, so it's a little different. But I am going to pass the torch. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and she should be pinned and highlighted for all to see, as you still have people joining.
I love us. I love us. Well, I am so excited to be here in this Zoom space with y'all for a little bit of time. I'll stay a while, as long as y'all stay a while. You know, I won't keep you long, as they say in church. But we are going to have a little data church for a little bit. So I'm going to hop in with my slides. And I really did not make my slides very long because I wanted us to have candid conversations. I wanted it to, of course, be captured by the video. That's why I'm glad it's being recorded. And I just wanted to make sure that you all had some framing on what we're talking about. And amen if you need to amen. You can amen in the chat. You can amen once we get to the Q&A portion or just the discussion portion of this. But yeah, very happy to kick off Black History Month with this presentation to you all. Because as a fellow educator, we have a lot of responsibility and, quite honestly, not a lot of resources, but we make it work. You know, we make a way out of no way, but we tired of making a way out of no way. So hopefully my book can provide some help, and hopefully this conversation will give you a chance in order to exhale. So let me go ahead and get started and tell you a little bit about the book, just like, you know, the overall purpose and background for why I even created this 352-page tome. Yes, it's long, but it's chock full of actionable and accessible type of content. It's written for those people who are not data professionals, to those who are in tech, to those people who are just reading things on the peripheral. But it's really just meant in order to galvanize what I call rebel tech And those are the individuals who are very aware of some of these ethical, social, historical, political issues and are trying to do their best in order to do better and make better, responsible, equitable types of tech. And for us that are in the room who are, of course, educators, it means how do we teach this in a way that doesn't go along with the mantra of move fast and break things, but really tries to be intentional and conscious about how we are navigating this algorithmic space and these digital waters. So that's what it's really for. And I break it up into three separate parts. So the first part is all about transparency. So how can we really focus in and reveal the outcomes and the impact of everything that is about the data, the code, and the algorithms as we use them inside of processes, systems, platforms, and institutions around our globalized world. Part two is all about accountability, and that's where I get into really the data pipeline and how do we hold organizations responsible for the consequences of what they code, and how these systems fail us meaning all those non-white cis folks, all of us, the whole us, everyone that's not a white male cisgendered person. And then the last part is governance. And that is all about what do we do about this and what is society doing in order to prevent or at least to reduce the harm-inducing tech that has become a constant mainstay in our lives, right? So there's the three parts. For the purposes of this discussion, I focused my comments on the first part and in particularly the first chapter. The first chapter is titled Oppression By, and I start out by really providing a history of essentially Black people in this country, and talk about how race has been a pawn from science to the law. So I'm talking about the history of oppression that then got digitized. So by the time we get to the end of the part one, by the end of chapter 4, you actually see this trajectory of how our race and our gender has been digitized in very harmful ways, especially us who are Black women that sit at that intersection. But in order to start this conversation, the very first thing I do in every chapter is to to quote myself. You know, I was trying to quote other people, but there weren't a lot of Black people that were around that actually got quoted inside of this discipline of data science, especially data education, and just in general in STEM. So I just took my own tweets. So this is how I start chapter 1, is talking about South Carolina's Black Code. And yes, I talk about slave codes, Black codes, Jim Crow. I talk about overt surveillance, covert surveillance inside of chapter 1 and go through a lot of the criminal background, how the criminal system in the United States was forged. But I wanted to focus in on the very first tweet that I quoted myself, is really talking about South Carolina's Black codes from over 150 years ago that really talk about a persons of color, and persons of color is really being decided as any one who has at least 1/8 Negro blood. So when people say persons of color today, they mean everyone who is non-white. But in 1865, 1866, it really just meant Black people. Everyone needs to reconcile that part. And the fact that all of our laws, the US laws, are built on anti-Blackness. And so this just gave way and gave entree into how our tech systems have been built, with anti-Blackness and misogyny as part of the structures, as the core, right in the middle. as we start talking about all of the issues that have happened within technology, we have to know that all of these issues have been done before outside of technology. And this is one example that struck me so hard that I had to tweet about it back in 2018 when I found it, and also to actually include it inside of the book. This is me quote tweeting a granddaughter of a woman who actually found this article. And this article, there's several articles on this slide, but the one that I want you to pay attention to is the article entitled "Negro Women to be Put to Work." And please note the date. The date is in 1918. 1918, if you do not know your history, 1918 was in the midst of the Spanish flu. So that meant that everybody was sick and didn't know why. Very similar to what we've just been through or just still going through as part of this panty. But the white people of South Carolina in this this area wanted to put the Black women to work, whereas the white women got to stay home. But the Black women were put to work because they somehow needed to be working, even though they had received enough money in order to not work. So I find this a very interesting dichotomy in how different people were treated differently by the law. And I relate that back to how we're treated differently even within inside of algorithmic-based systems. So I draw this parallel within the book in chapter 1, but I wanted everyone to at least see what was the crazy sauce that was happening during the previous pandemic. And as we saw in this most recent pandemic, Black people were hit harder by COVID and, of course, marginalized, suppressed, and given false information at much higher rates than those people who are not Black. Sorry, y'all. I just got to share my tweets because it's so important in order to understand some of this context of how oppression has been designed in our systems from the very beginning and just mirrored inside of all of our tech systems. So I wanted to provide a little bit of background on how eugenics works. And if you're unfamiliar with eugenics, it's essentially race science. It is talking about how people of different races or ethnicities have different biology and therefore should be treated differently. Their bodies should be treated differently. This is all false, and Black people have been guinea pigs in science. Their data has been taken. Their biology has been rebranded and resold, right, in many different ways. And we see this happening even today. Black people are the innovation. We make every platform successful, meaning we monetize every platform. We can talk about Twitter. When Black people got on it, Black Twitter be popping. Without Black Twitter, it ain't Twitter. TikTok, same thing. We make the platform. IG, we make the platform. If we're not in it, there ain't no money to be had. But yet we are always the consumer of this product and not the monetary beneficiary. And so this algorithmic discrimination has been part of our society since its inception, and it's just now been scaled and algorithmized inside of tech platforms. So there's a lot of rich history on how this came to be and many different examples that I share just within the first chapter to say, hey, these are things to look at. That's not just 1865. There's issues that have happened in the 1930s, issues that have happened in the 70s and even into the 2000s and now into the 2020s. So just be aware that race science and eugenics is not dead. It's actually surging up once again, especially in the midst of this COVID pandemic. But I wanted to switch gears a little bit and show exactly what the data set was when it came to facial recognition. I'm not sure how many people knew that this was the first data set when it came to facial recognition, but I wanted to show it. This is from 1991 from a paper called Face Recognition Using Eigen Faces. And yes, they're all men. I believe there are 15 white men and 1 person of Asian descent. And as you can see, the background is white. They're not smiling. There's only a couple people with glasses, a couple people like with beards, right? But there's no women, there's no people of color, right? There's no Black people, there's no Latin people, there's no Indigenous people, right? In this data set. This is where facial recognition started, right? About 2 years later, the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, as part of the government, they created a whole unit in order to look at facial recognition. And then that spun off into many different iterations that are still alive and well today. And of course, that spun off into a number of other different corporations that then began to use facial recognition in order to identify, to distinguish people. But of course, the basis has no Black people as part of it and no women. So Black women, if you're wondering why you might get misclassified quite a bit, now you have the root. It goes back to 1991 and some of that research that was done. So that gives a synopsis of chapter 1, but like, how does this relate to education, right? I've shown some social injustice. I've shown how some of the data can be manipulated, how data even outside a system can be harmful to Black people, and how it does relate to being harmful to Black people inside of a digital system. But how do we teach culturally responsive data skills in the classroom with this history of exclusion? Are y'all ready? I'm seeing some nods. So y'all ready? Okay. So I start with Ida B. Wells. I always start with Ida B. Wells. If you are familiar with Ida B. Wells, please drop it in the chat. Ida B is the grandmother, I would say, in my opinion, of the data industry, right? Because if you do not know the story of Ida B. Wells, you got to look her up. You got to just do your own research. More than Wikipedia, there is books, there is documentaries about her, but she was a force that always bucked up against the system that was not designed for her. She was way ahead of her time. And she wanted equality and equity for Black people. And she in particular wanted that equity and equality for Black women. And she was ostracized many times in her life because of it. And she was very vocal about it. She wrote a wonderful little pamphlet called A Red Record. And if you're unfamiliar with the Red Record, the slides will be given out after this, and you can click on this slide and you'll be able to get to the Red Record as part of the Library of Congress. And it is she tells the story of lynchings, and she gathered lynchings around the country from 1892 to 1894. She published this work in 1895. She self-published, which is very important to note. Many Black people were not able to self-publish at the time, but she self-published this information. So she gathered information about lynchings, who the people were, what their ages were, and as well as where. And then, of course, what was the quote crime that they committed. This is the first documented list of lynchings. This is the foundation that the NAACP used in its pursuit in order to get the lynching to be a federal crime. Right. So if you're looking back, oh my God, it's been all this time since, we've been lynched for generations, and we just got an anti-lynching federal crime bill passed just this past year. Where did it start? It started with Ida B. Wells' work. So this is the work, a red record. Very powerful place to start, especially for us, that we see data journalists do this work, and to be able to document the lynchings and the crimes that happen. Of course, crimes is in quotes. And then at the end, she has a call to action. Her call to action is to share this information and, of course, to donate, which I feel is very apropos of what Black women dealt with then and Black women deal with now, is that we always have a call to action, and we're always asking in order for people to put their money where their mouth is in order to root out anti-Blackness and misogyny, because misogynoir is something we need to get rid of, and we need to stop acting like it's our issue, it's their issue. So start with Ida B. Wells. This is where we start. This is the start of the history, not the white guy who did an algorithm from like 1950. It is Ida B. Wells. Next person that you talk about is W.E.B. And a lot of people know about W.E.B. and a lot of his work about the talented 10th, and that is controversial. I got words to say about that. We can do that on the other side. But with W.E.B., his visualizations was pioneering before there were a whole lot of visualizations in 1900. He tried to do this work and present it in the States, but he was unable to do that. He wound up having to go to Paris in order to do it. Many people don't realize that or know that. But he did this work right after Ida B. Wells' work was done. Question. So why didn't Ida B. and W.E.B. work together? And yet they both are founders of the NAACP. I'll just leave that for a discussion point that we'll talk about later. Okay. So W.E.B. has a whole bunch of infographics that are beautiful, that have been recreated by many people. We actually can see a time trajectory. Some people have taken some of his infographics and then duplicated them in using today's numbers. Very fascinating, very much showing the lives of Black people at the time in the late 1800s during the Reconstruction time era. And I think it's important in order to have this context of history and social and economics and political prowess that he was able in order to put this together. Most people don't also understand about W.E.B. is that he was not alone in doing this work. It was W.E.B., it was Tuskegee, and there was a third guy. But many people don't know that there were 3 people that actually did this work. So you can, again, when you get these slides, you can click on this and you'll be able to go to the information about W.E.B. and his work in this area. So I thought it was important in order to give this side by side of Georgia in 1890 and Georgia in 2010. I tried to find the 2021, but I couldn't find it. In these two, if you can actually zoom in when you get these slides, you actually see there is certain counties. The counties have pretty much stayed the same. There's about 155 counties in Georgia. And the counties have pretty much stayed the same. And you can see where is the population of Black people. And they're pretty much in the same spot between 1890 and 2010. You can see some movement when it comes to Black people not being in the central part of the state, of course, around the Atlanta area, and then down south on that southeast corner around the Savannah area, you'll see the higher populations of Black people, right? But then you're going to see up in the very northern parts, there's not a lot of Black people. And again, even in 2010, not a lot of Black people on the northern parts. So very interesting how our migration in time has not necessarily migrated the demographics and where people are having their homestead based upon the social and economic and political landscape. So again, great talking points in order to engage a classroom in why we care about data. And it's not just about the next new tech app that people are so crazed about. Again, we can talk about the craze at the end. But also just to start people out in understanding computing and data and why we need to take the curriculum and just upend it is because the concepts and the ideas have been whitewashed. You can't see yourselves in them. So as one sticking point for me inside of my book is that I had to explain an algorithm. This was the suggestion given to me by the editor. And I was thinking about what algorithm to do. You know, do we do PB&J? Do we do the shampoo algorithm? These are quintessential standards in order to share. But again, they're whitewashed. So I decided to just flip it a little bit. And I actually did the shampoo algorithm that actually went through the process of how I washed my dreadlocks. And I cannot tell you how many people who have gotten to chapter 4, seen this shampoo algorithm and saw this figure and was like, I feel seen. Because it's not just about washing the hair with the shampoo and then putting the conditioner. Like I went through moisturized phase. I went through gel. Most people don't even talk about these type of things. Let's talk about the things. What is us that makes us us? And talk about that when we are explaining the data concepts and all the computational thinking and what does that mean algorithmically. So we have this human facing notion of what we're talking about so that we don't separate the race from the data or the gender from the data, that we talk about both simultaneously. So with that said, I'm just going to end my remarks by saying that we need to understand who is in the classroom to know who is going to be in boardroom. And we're trying to do our best in order to motivate, incentivize, and retain people in the classroom in order for them to end up in the boardroom and to make some long-lasting type of change. I'm focused on the adults. Y'all might be focused on the children, but at the end of the day, our goal is the same, right? And so what I wanted to show just last little bit is just a website, datacareerpaths.com. I did this website with a bunch of collaborators, all dope women. And we created an interactive map. So we use some visualization. We use some publicly available data about graduate programs in the United States and try to figure out what was the likelihood of people of different demographics actually seeing themselves in the classroom. And so I tell you to check it out because this is the first time that we've actually had this type of content out in the world. Typically you go inside of a data program or computing program and you just hope you're not the only one. This actually gives you a mind's eye to what's the likelihood of seeing yourself? And do you want to be in that place? So I show an example of Georgia, and it's based on both race, ethnicity, and gender. So you see Asian men, Asian women, white men, white women, Black men, Black women, and you can see the institutions. Anything that's blue means that there is a overrepresentation. Anything that is orange or red means that is an underrepresentation. And this is important to know when you're walking into a space. And these are things that we can share with people who are looking for graduate programs. And hopefully one day we'll be able to do this for undergraduates, K through 12, et cetera. But for right now, we got the grad students, and we try to do our best in order to make sure that we are in the classroom, so that not only do we feel comfortable, but also that we are not alone in being in this discipline. We have to connect with each other, because if we don't, we're going to be islands to ourselves, and we're going to be siloed, and we're going to be silenced, and we're not going to be happy, and we're going to leave the discipline. And I'm hoping that a lot of us won't leave the discipline of computing as well as in the data field. So that's all that I really wanted to share. Thank you for your time and your attention. Connect with me on the socials. I'm on the Bird app. I'm on IG. I'm on LinkedIn. If you're interested in this type of data ethics conversation, feel free to subscribe to the Rebel Tech newsletter, and just let's chat it up. So with that, I give over to questions, thoughts, and conversations.
I'm so excited. There's so much here. I seen Abigail dropped in about algorithms and identity. And here in the Black Affinity group, that has been a conversation and definitely a focus that we're taking this month. Right, Portia? And it's like kind of aligned to what we're sharing.
Look at that. Great minds, great minds. We didn't even talk, and I just did
no,
that.
But the data angle is what we needed to include in this conversation. So I'm going to ask any of you to definitely just come up or drop it in the chat, any questions that you have or want more information. And I'm going to start with what Abigail dropped in the chat about this notion of algorithms and identity. How can we use that in our CS classrooms with our students?
There's so many different ideas. I have what I have done is done a hashtag Black computing. I've done that in the classroom, where I have championed recent alive Black people who have done dope things in the discipline. So that's definitely something that you can do just once a week. Share the person, what they did. I always share stuff about Dr. Gladys West, because people don't know about Dr. Gladys West. I'll be like, she was a pioneer of GPS systems. So every time you be trying to get from one place to another, she started that. She gave the whole map of the satellite. So that's one idea that I've done that actually is pretty successful. And I skip over all the slides with white people. And I tell the students that. I'd be like, white people did some stuff. I'm gonna skip those slides. They skip over us, so we can skip over them. What's the difference? The students can read that mess in the Wikipedia. They skip over that and get to the good stuff. And if there happens to be a link to a Black person, I bring it up. Right. So if I'm talking about, oh my God, computing has so many different things. If someone's talking to me about algorithmic bias, I'm talking about, Dr. Timmy. If someone's talking to me about, I just kind of want to get an idea of facial recognition and blah, blah, blah. I'm bringing up Black women, Black men that have been part of the discipline for years and years. Like, that's what I do. So it's just Blackifying the experience at every turn, at every chance. Even the examples that I use, like the shampoo algorithm. I'll how do you shampoo your hair? Talk about it. Some people have a whole bunch of ointments, right? I'm not going to try to make the Supercuts version of the shampoo algorithm work for us, because that's not our experience. We don't go into Supercuts. You look at Supercuts and go, see a Black person in there going, they must be there just for the job.
It's okay, Portia, you can come off mute. You know they don't know.
What I said that. I did. I said it. I said it. You see the black person in supercuts, you be like,
They new to the area.
They knew. And they got no friends and no family to tell them, don't go into supercuts.
I don't even have words. I don't even.
You're welcome.
I don't even have words. I'm gonna see if there's anyone has questions from the audience before I ask another one. So, like Abigail, for some reason, I just see you.
I've got one question.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Okay, I was like, for some reason, I don't see everybody. But go ahead.
Hey, yes, so David Locke at the School of Applied Computational Sciences at Meharry Medical College.
Okay.
So nationally, it's about 3% for the number of students entering data science and computer science, a graduate, undergraduate level.
Yep.
Recently there's been a big push within various federal agencies. NASA's one of them. They're pushing data science institutes and different programs, as as well as NSF and NIH. What would you say? What are some more ways to increase that number? Because 3% is something that I have to reference in a lot of different projects, and it's a pretty low number.
Yeah, it's pretty low. I think that the root of the issue is the fact that data science came out of computer science, statistics, and math, which already had very low representation and participation of Black people. So it was going from a well that already had trouble, right? And I think that the national discourse around Data Science Institute is well-intentioned, but they don't have enough. How snarky do I want to be is the question. They don't have this book on their roster. Why? They keep doing the same old played out whiteness. They don't have examples that show Black people as the contributors and the creators and the makers. They don't show Indigenous people. They don't show Latin people. They don't show people with disabilities. They don't do any of that. They are just recycling the same old played out playbook that has been soaking in the sun, in the water for 5 decades, and they need to stop that. So that's the problem. They're not making it interesting. Once I start talking about Ida B and I start talking about her story and I start talking about Ida B and WEB and what's that relationship? Because they basically have done the same thing. Why didn't they work together? Now we get into what people care about, which is the T. Everybody trying to make it so prim and proper. Talk about the messy stuff. You gonna get us in there. But the problem is that the data industry is lucrative. And quite honestly, a lot of white people do not want us in it because we will change it up. We will innovate beyond their thoughts and imaginations. And they don't want that. They don't want us making the money. They don't want us developing. So we're in a space where colonizers are colonizing. We got to build our own. So all the billionaire Black people that want to do something, fund an institute. That's my answer for that. I have much more to say, but I'm gonna keep it clean.
We okay with you sharing?
I kept it clean. That's as clean as I'm gonna keep it. That's it. I'm done.
So my next question is, from some of the resources that you shared, where can teachers gather resources to share with students in high school or in middle school, to topics that are relevant to them? So how can they tie back to the to Ida B. Wells? How can they tie back to this, to where it impacts students in their immediate communities?
Yeah, this is the hard part, because even though I would say definitely purchase my book, shameless plug, but also it's very difficult because a lot of the resources are in different places. The teacher has to go out and build them themselves because there is no house for it. You can look at X History Month and get the resources from there, and then you have to do that background work in order to tie it to your classroom. That's unfortunate. There's at least some websites for at least Black excellence, like Represent 365, that Dr. Nikki Washington has put together, that gives a great list of folks who have done some awesome things within many different STEM disciplines. But creating that tie between the contributions of whatever demographic to the classroom is something that has to be built, because the education system isn't including it. Black people are only known and revered for being enslaved. So unless you're in an African American studies or Black studies class or sociology, you're not going to see that information. When you go a little bit higher up in the education system, there's several different resources that I put on my Data edX website that at least share some things. There's the Just Tech platform that gives great, articles and commentary and opinion and research. But again, that's for someone that's in, undergrad or in grad school, or in the workplace. But for that K through 12, there's nothing. It's just regurgitating the same meh stuff. Like, the white man did this, the white man did that. No other person did anything. Oh yeah, there was a white woman that did something. And they just talk about, Anita Borg, and then that's pretty much, and Grace Hopper, and that's pretty much it. No other white person did anything, like no other white woman did anything other than those two, basically.
This is a question for you, but also the audience. With everything that's happening or has happened since this, what you call it, this pandemic that we had, since what, circa 2020?
Yes.
That also brought forth a movement, right, that impacts our students in our community. Right. How can, this is also to teachers, to you all in the classroom, how could you see utilizing data science for them to gather? You know how we like say their name, and unfortunately the list is that part. It is extensive. How could, and this is a question again to you and the audience, how could data science help to share and highlight not only who they were, like by gathering that data, the impact of what has been done, right? That could be from the lens of the police brutality and XYZ, the shootings, all of these things. All of that is a combination of data that needs to be shared. Me personally, I've only seen the list,
right,
but not the information that goes along with it. Like how to make change, we know as educators is through data.
Yes.
You got to show the numbers, come with the receipts. The names is a long receipt, but it doesn't hold the value or relevance to actually impact legislators who want to see that percentage that David was talking, that 3%. Well, I don't know if that's what it is. Even from the penitentiary system, the number of students that we have going directly in, depending on state or location, like those things students can relate to because they don't want to become one of those. Right. That statistic. Right. How, and that's going back to teachers, to you all here, and then to you. So I'm gonna stop talking, but that's what I'm kind of wondering.
I think that there is, okay, I have several thoughts, so I'm gonna try to get them all out. The first one is there's a list of those who have been murdered by police, but we don't talk about their life. So I think a way in order to talk about getting data skills, why the data education is so important, is to talk about their life. Can you provide students with the names of certain people? Every student gets a different name, and you have to find information about their life, not about their death. Because their life is what we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate, you know, Tyree Nichols skateboarding, holding his son. That's what we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate Trayvon Martin, who was just going out to get some Skittles, right? We need to celebrate, and he was just a kid. He was 17, right? So we need to celebrate their life, because if we start as educators concentrating on their death, that has harmful mental impacts to a generation of students who have seen a lot of despair and a lot of death. So that's the first thought that I have, celebrating their life and providing that trajectory of their life, right? And make sure that we balance it between men and women. There's a lot of conversation about the men murdered, but not necessarily a lot of conversation about the women who have been taken and murdered and things like that. So let's talk about Sandra Bland. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor and all the other women in their life, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is really provide like a time series in a couple of different ways. One is the time in history of when these individuals met their demise, right? So just the rate in which it's happening, that's one way. But also just having an idea of what is the story, what is the commonalities of the stories of their encounters with police, right? And not everyone that encountered police died, right? There was a gentleman, I cannot remember his name right now, who was shot 6 times, but he's still alive, and I cannot remember his name. Someone can drop it in the chat. So how do we talk about that, right? And let's look at their ages, right? So what are the ages of these individuals? Are they teenagers? Are in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s? Let's have that conversation. But we have to be sensitive to the fact that we don't want to completely and always share about the terribleness that has happened to Black people. So we have to put it in context. Listen, this is the reality, but this is how we're going to talk about it. And this is a way for us to process this information. And we have to keep our minds and our guiding light to the fact we're not talking about data points, we're talking about data people, like maintain their humanity in all things. What is happening when it comes to their foundations? What is the needed information as far as getting a bill, right, proposed in Congress? Who is the senators and the Congress people working on that? How can we move from the hurt and the pain of our people dying at the hands for no reason? How can we now look at what is the legislation? How can we be part of that endeavor? How can we inform the lawmakers and the policymakers in order to push forth the numbers, look at this dichotomy, and when Black people are encountering police, this is what happens to them. This is the data, right? So let's not try to minimize their deaths, but let's try to take these young minds and then move them into understanding their not only data citizenship, but also their civic citizenship. And what does that look like? Because we know people in Congress don't know ish about data and they need to know. So the 3% number, like the gentleman asked about, is one part of the issue. If you wanted to look at the percentage of Black people inside of the data industry, what is their contribution? Because I bet dollar to none that those 3% are doing a whole lot more work than that 97%.
I know, that was a mic drop. Oh, I'm gonna throw it back out to the audience. Yes, because you all are pulling some points. Any additional questions or aha moments or wonderings for Dr. Marshall?
This is a quiet group. See, this is why sometimes recordings aren't good. If we took this off recording, I bet everybody be talking.
You so right. But I'm about to get them though. So since no one has questions, we're gonna take a group shot. So I'm gonna give you 10 seconds to come off mute. Come off camera, pull your camera on. So we can take a group shot. Look. So now everybody coming on.
Yeah. I love us.
Yes. That's what. Oh,
Got them
it's all kinds of pictures. Look, people in the dark. Yes. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we're still pinned, so I don't know if you have to unpin us so that we get a group shot.
Oh, I can see it. I changed it on view.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah. But I'm gonna take the pins off so that at least I thought I was.
We gonna get everybody.
We almost there. We almost there.
We almost.
I need to pull over.
People driving.
Yes. It's people shopping. I know though, you moving. And we appreciate you being here. All of you. We almost there. I'm gonna give another 5, 4, and then I'm gonna hide the 1, 2 cameras are off. All right, 5, 4, 3. Yes, I see some more. I see you coming there. See,
Gotta pose it up.
It's just a moment. That's it. It's a quick. I promise. It's just a quick. We know it's after work. After work. I get it. Anyone else coming off before I snap this photo? 5. Yeah, you looking good, Leonte. I see you. This is family. So you just have to do that. All right. 5, 4, 3. Oh, see, there go another one. Oh, you didn't made it to a warm space now. Oh, beautiful. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Got it. What a great pick. All right, so now, boy, y'all jumping quick too.
Oh, wow.
Turn them cameras off. Okay, while you're here, so that was just to pull you in. But now while you're here, what thoughts or ideas do you have from what Dr. Marshall shared with us this evening? Feel free to just come off mute and let's just have dialogue, conversation.
Hi, Brandeis.
Hey,
Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for answering the call when I need you. With everything that's going on with critical race theory and the governor of Florida trying to ban AP African American Studies, what are your thoughts for trying to increase more diversity, equity, inclusion, especially in computer science, if more barriers being placed upon other states from a political standpoint, and especially in Georgia where we are already blue? There's no telling where we might end up in the foreseeable future. So what is your stance on that?
Right. So CRT, as all of you know, CRT isn't in K through 12 education. It's just a play in order to get rid of the contributions of Black people inside of our history. So my stance is, I always like flipping it. I don't try to argue with the system. I just work around the system. I bend it to my will. So I would say, use the social media platforms since they're all are free and start sharing a whole bunch of Black history, especially Black Floridians. I would do that in the classroom. I would do that on social media, and you just drop them in. Because what they can't take away is your voice. They can try to take away the class. It's not going to work, but they're going to try. But all you have left is that's your classroom. And in your classroom, you can drop a name. They're not going to know. They can't watch everybody. And the best thing to do is not have it just Black people. Have the white teachers do it. Right? Have the white teachers be the one to do it and the Black people not do it. That would really just get his goit, right? Right? Sprinkle it in with Latin people, sprinkle it in with Asian people and indigenous people. It's not just Black people. We're just talking about people who've contributed to the field. We just thought it was important that they know this information. So I like flipping it. I say people arguing with DeSantis, go ahead and argue with him if you want to, but that is going to burn yourself out. But if you keep it positive and you just start sharing what Black people, Asian people, indigenous people, Latin people have done, there's no way he can stop that, because once people get information, he can't take it away. Once it's out, he can't retract it. And he's trying to muzzle everybody to focus and be distracted by what games he's playing. So people's all mad at him and talking about the class. No, you share the content so that more people know. And then effectively, you would have done the educating thing with or without the class.
For the people in the back, not just the people in the back, the orgs and the corporations and the school systems and the school boards who are distracted by the message versus the purpose.
Right. Just share it. Put in black authored books in your classroom, Black authored, articles. That's how you do it. It could be assigned as optional reading. Doesn't have to be part of the required curriculum. It could be optional. Doesn't have to be tested on, but you can have a 20-minute discussion in your class about a 2 or 3 page article that the students read. Well, what do y'all think about this? Just mess them up.
Mm-hmm.
Do stuff around the system, because we all know how the educational system works, and we know the educational system is broken. It don't serve who it's supposed to serve. We all know that. So we might as well just educate the way it should be done, but just understanding the guides, the guardrails that we have to a little bit adhere to. But if we just bump it with our hip real quick, no one's gonna notice that bump, because it goes right back. You just bump it and it goes right back. No one don't know. You just keep walking. Let's walk real fast. No one's gonna know it's you. It's the person behind you. I'm not a good influence.
You are. I don't have a question, Dr. Marshall, but I get a comment. Maybe it'll lead to a question. I don't know. But I love this whole story of intersectionality of data and identity and culture, and the idea of creating data stories. And I can see how this might be a bridge for many computer science educators to integrate the input or the in-way to integrating CS into all the other disciplines, right?
Yeah.
So how can we, even when you were saying talking about the books, I was thinking, well, how can we pull in data about books that we have in our school library, who's represented, etc. And you could do that in your history class with the history teacher, or something like that. Do you have thoughts on different ways that this notion of data science could be pulled to create these data stories from various other disciplines?
Oh yeah, I think, data fuels the algorithms that's making the tech, and data is the foundation of all of our world right now, right? Everyone's trying to collect it and monetize it, point blank, period. Okay. So I think every industry could look at analytics in particular and trying to do just basic analytics of just counting how many authors are women, how many authors are men, how many authors, identify as non-binary. Like, oh wait, there's no listing of non-binary authors. Why is that, right? What does that mean? Let's start looking at different disciplines in order to pull in different facets of how we collect data, and understanding that data isn't just numbers. Data is what we hear, what we see. It is the text, it is the video, it is the audio. How do we engage students in understanding the broad spectrum of data? So when they're sitting there and they're gaming, we can then go, okay, so you're gaming, so let's reflect upon your gaming. Okay, how many hours do you spend? And then what skills are you learning? That is eye-hand coordination. You have to have some spatial things as well. So, okay, how does that work? How can you use that? What type of skills do you need to do a job that uses what you're doing in gaming? That's another, like, a little assignment, right, that you can give students. But I think every discipline has a foothold into the data industry. That's why I call it data industry and not data science, because it's just more expansive. We can look at the political realm, right? I mean, Steve Karnacki is everywhere on MSNBC.
He's made data so fun.
And he's talking about numbers, and he's making that really engaging with his beige pants and his white shirt and his off, little bit off tie, he makes it very engaging. So how can we do that with other disciplines? Is that he is breaking down a whole bunch of information and making it into snackable elements. Every discipline can do that with data, because every discipline uses data. That's how they make money. That's how they know what colors are on the runway. They know what fashion items are going to be popping for that spring or fall. They use data. How do they use the data? That's the question. And then wrapping around that is the instruction to the students.
Thank you for sharing that Data Career Paths website. My school is going to start a intro to data science class next year, and we're trying to recruit students, and I can think of a couple dozen right now that may not see themselves, but with that website they're going to see themselves, and I think they're going to be interested. So thank you.
You're welcome. And then on the site there's I think a couple of professional organizations that you might want to connect with as well. I'm not sure if they're K through 12, but at the very least they will be able to help you out in connecting you with some great resources.
How are we feeling, everybody?
People are tired.
Educators are tired.
I mean, okay, let me just hold space for that for a minute, because educators are tired is a statement, but we need to have words about that. In the past 3 years, educators have had to figure out how to virtual, how to in-person again, and how to hybrid without any real direction. Educators are tired. Just in general. And then or support, +1 on Brian. So the essential workers was touted as the physicians and the nurses, but everyone forgot about the educators. And I said this very early in the panel, was like, watch educators, y'all missing the educators are gonna leave, because this right here is some bar foo. Fraganacle shenanigans. What? I got a what? I mean, I can't tell you how many emails I received. Oh, so and so in my family has passed away. Can I get an extension? What am I supposed to tell the babies? What am I? No, you can't get an extension. Yes, of course you get an extension. Right? Or the babies that email, sorry, I call college students babies, excuse me. The college students will email and say things that I just be like, of course you get an extension. Like what I'm supposed to do? We're in the middle of the world has shut down. And no one has really addressed the mental and the physical strife and pain of that. They just expect us to kind of go back to the classroom and just kind of be who we were and the students to be who they are. But what we have found out is that the students are not the same and we are not the same. And the education system that we knew was broken is even more broken. And there's even more technology in order to help students cheat that we then have to contend with because no one wants to say the thing, which is educators need better supports and better standard and guidelines. So I just wanted to hold space for y'all K through 12 folks. I mean, as a higher ed, I had my own pain, but K through 12, y'all the real rock stars because I couldn't. I mean, the kids in the tutu upside down on the Zoom. I mean, I just was like, I don't know how teachers manage to deal with all that type of stuff because I couldn't. Yeah. Yes. +1 to the chat. Turn the class to a dance party. Yes. What you talking about? I lectured very short and then I let them go because I was just like, we're not going to be on here for, 75 minutes. This doesn't make sense.
Any additional feedback, questions, concerns? Portia, I haven't heard from you. And you are a believer, follower, lurker, everything. Yeah, I'm putting it on the spot.
Man, dang.
Just like, this was great. So much information to just process and figure out like where to go from here, right? Like actionable. I love actionable. So thank you, Dr. Marshall. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Ida B. Wells, put that slide in there. That's one
So
action.
Shayna, let's just say it together. You're welcome because Brandeis inspired my life a few years ago when I took a data processing class, and yeah.
Was she hard?
Yeah.
I like that part. Was she hard?
Yeah. And that's why she's my shero in Atlanta.
Don't leave then. Don't leave Atlanta. They need you.
Yo, I'm not planning on it. The weather's good. I like the place. Be here. But they start acting a fool, I'm gonna be out. We start getting some Florida shenanigans. I'm gonna be looking at them kind of cockeyed. Well, unless Stacey Abrams decides to run again, and I'm gonna be like, I gotta stay. I gotta vote for her for like the 15th time. Every ballot she was on, I was like, why do I gotta fill out this ballot? That's what I wanted to say. Y'all know who I'm gonna vote for.
We have to use some data science to figure out how to get other people to recognize that they need to go out and vote.
But that's the thing, is that Fair Fight had all the data and still people didn't get out and vote. A lot of the undercurrent of Fair Fight and the Georgia project is all in data because they have data on every single county. What's the demographics? How many people are registered to vote? How many people aren't? What's the ages? They have all that information because they went door to door. It'd be a great case study one day if they would ever release their data. I highly doubt they would, but if they ever would, it would be fascinating.
I was looking at that from the 1619 project on Hulu yesterday. what you're saying is directly tied to that, and how we, as you said, people of color from back then, but us as Black people, the impact on the country as a whole stemmed from what you started with today. Like,
Yeah.
and you can't dispute it.
Nope. But they want to hide it because they can't dispute it, so they want to hide it. That's why you show it, so then it's not hidden anymore. So their attempts to hide it makes them look like buffoons.
So speaking of, since someone else is talking, I'll talk. So speaking of activism, can you think of a small data collection project that could be used with K-12 students to do some advocacy work or activation work?
K through 12 is broad. It's too broad.
You could narrow. Let's go high school. I don't know who's on. Let's go high school.
High school. So high school, there are data sets. I mean, there is, data.world that has diversity data sets. Data.gov does have data sets that are relatively small. That's great in order to provide students with enough, Excel spreadsheet information. Data.gov and then data.world. Those are two that I would champion. If you want to have them do like the data cleaning component of it, like if they're little like juniors, seniors in high school, you can give them a Talby survey, because that is the CS Talby survey that is pretty rich with figures and numbers that they have the PDFs, which they have to then turn into Excel spreadsheets, and then they have to make sure it all works, right? Make sure you can actually extract the data from the PDF. That would be a good exercise.
How do you spell it? I don't even know what you said.
Oh, Talby. I'll put it in the chat.
I'm trying to.
Thank you.
That was
all.
Yeah, Talby.
Oh, I was not getting that.
Yeah, Talby survey. That is the list of PhD granting institutions who have decided to give their data on the number of graduate students in their program, but they have to be PhD and CS PhD granting institutions. They do computer science, computer engineering, and information sciences, I believe. There's no HBCUs or other MSIs as part of it. And of course, this is volunteer self-report information. And so it comes out every year. You can look it up, have a great discussion with the class about just the data itself and the students.
Why is there no HBCUs down here? I'm just curious.
Oh, you asking me as a Black person? I don't know.
Because
you gotta ask. You gotta ask ACM. That's who is in charge of it.
Because there's not a lot of Black HBCUs that have a lot of CS or cybersecurity programs, and it's more tailored towards the other group. Sorry to say it that way. And so when you're trying to recruit more minorities, again, this is something that I'm working on in my dissertation. You're looking for exposure, and if there's no exposure and there's no other group that's willing to have a program at those HBCUs, then we're going to continue to be limited. We need more HBCUs to focus on CS curriculum on a PhD level. But again, who's going to teach it? A lot of times people don't want to leave industry. They're coming into academia to try to teach those professions. So it's like a win-lose or a lose-lose situation.
Yep. Amber said it. I just said ask ACM.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. This was a lot of information, and I appreciate all of it. I think one thing, I don't know if it's a question, but maybe just a statement, and you mentioned it, Ms. Marshall, regarding the connection between data science and math, right? And a lot of times our children, this is their, it's like a no-go zone, you know. I know in terms of computer science, I'm a computer science teacher, almost 20 years. When I'm looking at what happens in colleges, even they've decided to like pull math out of some of their computer science program, or dumb it down to math, not dumb it down, but, you know, limit the amount of math that you need for some of these CS degrees. I think you need a BA, they have BAs in computer science now, not only a BS's, just because the students are just so weak or just reluctant to just embrace those numbers. So I think with data science, you might be like hitting a double wall, like CS and I gotta do math, you know. It's like, what? You know, it doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound interesting to a lot of students. You know, I personally love math, and I always try to push math in my class, but you know, I think that's like a double whammy almost, you know. And it is really a testament, not in a good way, to the way that we do math education in our country, in our schools. You know, we don't really make it relevant or make it make sense a lot of the times. And so I think not only in the CS realm, but also in that math realm, you know, it's important that our students embrace math, you know, and they don't.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like, I completely agree, because I've been teaching for over 20 years as well. And I've seen the math acumen, as they call it, because they just don't want to talk about ill prepared, the math acumen of students has changed over the years, and not in a good way. It's not a good trajectory. But you talk to students about money, then they want to talk about that. That's how I was introduced to math. I was, okay, so I'm gonna date myself. Coins, rolling coins, and who's gonna say amen to that? Amen in the chat. Okay, I see the people, nodding their heads, yes. So that's what I got, how I got introduced to math, was figuring out what coin went together, because my mom had me separate out. So that's basically a little old, you know, clustering algorithm. Okay. And then you got to count them up to make sure you get the right amount. Hello, there we go. You got to count them up. So you're doing a frequency count. So that's some descriptive stats, right, going on. And then I had to put all those coins inside of that roll, which means it was constrained. I couldn't put more, I couldn't put less. Right? So I had to be exact. So I'm learning precision, which is part of math. And then I had to do that for all of the coins. And then I had to count up the money. And right. And so putting all the coins again, they were heavy, right? Because that big Worcestershire salt, you know, that big, great Welch jar. Y'all know what I'm talking about, that glass Welch jar y'all had that they don't sell no more. That's where all the coins were in, right? And then we took that to the bank. And then I had to check what I counted was what the bank teller told me. So now I'm checking my results. Again, that's part of the algorithm. That's how an algorithm works. You halt until you get to an answer. Now I'm trying to verify the answer, right? So all of these things is part of the reason why, I think data science is at this intersection where people see it as something unfun and useless and not relatable, and there's no application. But you start putting some financial literacy behind that, miss, I think we got something to talk about, because everybody trying to get coin, especially when they're in college. You start telling them why this matters. How is this important? Related to politics, related to fashion, related to beauty, related, right? So that's what we need to do. But I think you're right. There's just this trajectory that I think computer science is just creative math. It's just math with a twist for me. So, because I love math too. I also love money.
Right.
Most people, right?
I know
So
you
we-
have students who, like, in my opinion, they hate decimal as like a, you know,
Right.
oh my
Ooh.
God, not a decimal. I'm like, 25 cents. All right. That's a decimal. Okay. Everything.
Right. Like,
Break that dollar down. You got 4
Right.
quarters. Stop
Exactly.
playing.
stop playing. You know, I mean, people don't, that's how I started. And again, dating myself, when candy used to cost a quarter and a dime, you know, when you were a kid, you were trying to get that quarter, that dime. You're trying to like, oh, I only have a dime. I need another dime and I need a nickel
Yes.
to get that thing, right? Like,
You
this
broke
is
it down.
this is what happens back in the day, right? But that doesn't happen now. Money is on a screen. Money isn't in their hand. Right? Oh, yes, from the bottom of your mama's purse. Yes.
Stop playing. The
Dirty.
ice cream man
Yes.
is coming.
Right.
Need
You
some
got
extra 15 cents.
you got 5 seconds to get that money and 10 seconds to run out there and get that ice cream. Why are you asking your mama, can I go and get that ice cream for the ice cream man truck before he run away real fast? Mama, can I go get the ice cream man? Right. Like, those are some of the things. And this type of, you know, unconnected to the numbers and this fear of fractions, you don't want to mention fractions just tailspin, right? But if we relate it to something that they can directly care about, okay, if you want to, like, for me, when it comes to college students, I will talk about, you know, social media and engagement numbers.
Mm.
How do you figure out engagement rate, y'all? Let's talk about it. Are you an influencer? Are you getting money from being an influencer? Are you just posting stuff just all willy-nilly? Do you even know what to charge if you're going to be a brand influencer? What does that even look like? All right, let's not even talk about Cash App. Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, I'd be like, I don't use those things. I want FDIC insured. FDIC insured, right? So how do we, you know, spin this in order to get them to understand that numbers aren't scary? It's a matter of how they are looking at the information so that they can then learn what they need to learn. And then they can make whatever money and create whatever life they want to create. But if they don't know their numbers, if they are scared of math, life is going to be hard for you. You can't rely on Mint to figure out, you know, your life and organize your money. You're going to need to go in there and do it yourself. Right. And they'll, you know, rack up loans, you know, even as I said, since I, you know, teach at the college level, it's all about, you know, the loans that they have. I was like, you understand, you don't pass this class, you might have to stay another semester. Yeah, I mean, like, do y'all understand? Do y'all understand that? How much money is that, right? That you're gonna have to pay back. And they just don't even want to think about it. But we got to have financial literacy in our communities. I think that's a foothold that we all can be a part of, is that literacy of finances.
I need you to come over here to preach to the one who refuses to listen in my household. I'm just being real. The struggle is real. And what you
got to take the money away.
The card, the app.
Yeah. They have to, if they don't want to budget, you have to make them budget. Gotta make them budget.
Your students too.
I say a whole bunch of crazy stuff.
Oh, I hear you, Leontay. Cut off the card.
So Shayna, can we have a part 2?
I mean, give them actual money. You know what I mean? Like, give them actual money and say, you have 2 weeks that you need to spend this money. Because that's the real deal. When they realize like how far $20 go, it gets you a movie ticket and some jujubes.
We not in that world. These
It
kids.
depends on the time of day.
I was gonna say, is this a matinee? What we talking about?
That's what I mean. Have them think through. Oh, I can't go to a night movie. I gotta go to the first movie because a matinee is only the first showing.
Actually, as you bring this up, I
Explain to
have
my
a
women.
friend who has a young child and she does a movie night in her home. It's awesome. She sets up snacks. She gives him cash. He has to figure out how much the ticket for the movie is, and then what he has and which snacks he can purchase. It's great.
Yeah, it's this decision making that is part
Mhm.
of computing, right? It's also part of math. But if they're not exercising that muscle regularly and often, they don't even know they have it. So they don't use it. They just swipe.
Y'all, I hope that I hear Amber calling for part 2. I
Oh,
hope
part 2.
I wish we could come together in person. Have to make this some sort of reality. We would love for you to come back, and I'm sure I speak for everyone here that we are appreciative for your time this evening, and appreciative for all of you who joined this evening, and everyone here that actually registered for this. You will get this recording. You will get this recording after this session. So, and you have already sent the slides, so we can also include that. It will follow up with the survey, even though the survey is in the chat. I did want to share a couple of things that aligns to the message you all heard this evening. There is a few more events that this affinity group is hosting throughout the month. Not just for the month. Portia actually calls this the CS Homecoming. So versus Black History Month, it is homecoming. I'm saying that so you all are aware. So I am dropping in the chat some resources that you can see all of the events that are coming. I'm gonna share my screen very quickly, very quickly, as it is 6:30. I have to go to something else. One more meeting. But this is the Gina Lee with all of the events. And there is one more that aligns to your message this evening, ma'am. Who knew? Who knew? So this group has come up with the idea in collaboration with Leolyn, who's on here. We discussed the Crown Act and how this ties back to those algorithms. Your process, that shampoo algorithm brought everybody life. Like that is already on social media, so you can pull that algorithm if you need to remember the steps for shampooing, because that was real. But what we're asking is, from this, if you would share how you would bring this into your classroom. And one of you in here in the chat mentioned something about this, like, I'll pass this on to my secondary. We actually are saying this is from pre-K to 12. How do you bring telling your story into your classroom and make it relatable so that kids can actually see themselves prior to you even programming, but showing them how this is interrelated? How can they calculate their data? Is there something you want to say on this? I see you looking. But this is just some of the resources, and there's some other sessions tied to it even more. If you are familiar with the New York City CS for All, there's an Equity Foundations course. There was one earlier, we didn't mention that one just yet, but there's one tomorrow. So if you missed today because you were here with us, there's one tomorrow that you can join, and other resources of things that are happening. This will be shared in our virtual community, in our Slack, on social media, and more on the campaign, so that you can spread the word, share your crown, show off those dreads, curls, fro, whatever it is you have, so we can highlight how we can be who we are authentically in our workspaces, in our classrooms, in our communities. That's all we have this evening. We do appreciate you all, and we will see you next week, because we got another one next week.
Thank you, Dr.
And-
Marshall.
Yes, Dr. Marshall, you will hear more and see more of us
Yes.
in a short period, not
I already know the Slack I'm gonna get. Hey.
you already on Slack. You've been tagged.
Oh, so okay. I put everything on do not disturb. So I'll get to it, y'all.
We know, we understand.
I didn't want dings to happen while I'm talking.
We get it. We all get it. We get it. Look, we understand. You gotta have a minute, but